Here's a glimpse of the terrifying power of the original vampires. One man taking on an entire pack of werewolves. 1 heart, 2 hearts, 3 hearts, the heart-ripping demon. Elijah, a mesmerizing gentleman brute. The only reason the werewolves dared to challenge the original vampires was that they discovered the sun and moon curse. To break the sun and moon curse, the pack leader Brady brought in a group of werewolves, ready to snatch the moonstone from the vampires. This is when Tyler learned that if the werewolves break the curse first, they'll be able to control their transformations at will, allowing them to finally rise above the vampires who've always held them down. But Tyler has no desire to be a werewolf. He agreed to help purely so he could rid himself of the agony of transforming forever. Besides the moonstone, they also needed the sacrifice, Elena, to break the curse. To find out where Elena was, Tyler stole Caroline's phone. Tyler learned through text messages that Elena was vacationing at the cabin her parents left her, with her vampire boyfriend Stefan by her side. Elena and Stefan discovered a secret room in the cabin, filled with weapons designed to hunt vampires. Meanwhile, Damon called in his ally Alaric to show him a weapon capable of killing the original vampires. He hesitated about whether or not to use it on Elijah, considering Elijah had saved his life twice, and John, who provided the weapon, had ulterior motives, clearly counting on Damon's desire to kill Elijah. As it happens, there was a tea party in town today. With Elijah as the guest of honor, Damon decided to confront Elijah there and make his decision afterward. Even as a powerful original vampire, Elijah maintained his gentlemanly demeanor despite Damon's repeated acts of disrespect. But Damon wasn't impressed. He relentlessly pressed Elijah about his true intentions. Elijah got angry, and the consequences were severe. It was only then that Damon realized just how vast the power gap between them was. To save himself, Damon had to invoke Elijah's promise. True to his word, Elijah only gave Damon a light punishment, even handing him his own handkerchief.
You should do what I say. Keep Elena safe.
Meanwhile, John was growing increasingly frustrated with Alaric. He resented how this outsider had replaced him in his own household. So John threatened Alaric, forbidding him from spending the night at Jenna's home.
It's inappropriate with children in the house.
Bonnie, looking to gather intel from Luca, decided to drug him. She slipped a potion into his drink and then used her magic to probe Luca's mind, discovering that he had a sister who had fallen into Klaus's hands. Luca and his father were forced to cooperate with Elijah in a desperate attempt to save his sister, but Elijah's plan was to strike after the ritual when Klaus would be at his weakest. However, completing the ritual required Elena's blood.
We both want him dead.
Damon called Alaric over for a drink as they plotted how to take down Elijah, but all the information they had came from John, and John was far from trustworthy. Alaric suddenly shifted the conversation to Damon's love life, knowing that talking morality to a vampire was futile. So, he had only one request, not to harm the new reporter, Andy.
Just don't kill her, please. If I did, who would report her death?
After finishing their drinks, Alaric prepared to leave, but as soon as he stepped outside, he was stabbed in the abdomen. Before Damon could react, he was ambushed and knocked down by a werewolf. Jules's forces hadn't even fully attacked, and Damon was already down. At the same time, Brady and Tyler arrived at the cabin, ambushing and overpowering Stefan. As Tyler guarded Stefan had no choice but to reveal the truth. Breaking the curse would mean Elena's death. Tyler was utterly shocked. The werewolves had kept this crucial detail from him. When Stefan didn't return, Elena decided to go outside and check on him, unaware that Brady was lying in wait just outside the door. But Brady underestimated Elena. She stabbed him the moment they met. Furious, Brady turned the cabin into a hunting ground, chasing after Elena. To force Damon to reveal the location of the moonstone, the werewolves subjected him to brutal torture. The collar they used seemed tailor-made for vampires, but Damon would rather die than give up the moonstone's location. It was right here that Damon once tortured and killed Mason, with Alaric's body lying at his feet. Damon breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the resurrection ring on Alaric's hand. Now, all Damon had to do was buy some time. Inside the cabin, the quick-witted Elena used her jacket to lure Brady, then staged a diversion that left Brady in a disheveled state. Humiliated and enraged, Brady grew tired of playing cat and mouse. He launched a full-scale pursuit of Elena, only to run straight into Stefan, who was lying in wait. Ironically, Stefan had been lying in wait in the very spot where Brady had set his ambush for Elena. Stefan ripped Brady's heart out. Tyler had a conscience after all, and Stefan and Elena forgave him after his sincere apology and remorse. Meanwhile, Damon refused to give in, even as his neck was reduced to a bloody mess. Unexpectedly, Elijah arrived just then. He had one hand in his pocket, the other casually holding the moonstone, leaning against the wall, exuding elegance with every move. Many vampires go their entire lives without ever encountering the originals, let alone werewolves, who lack immortality. The werewolves didn't know Elijah's identity, but they were subdued by his overwhelming presence. The moonstone had not been destroyed after all. Elijah placed the moonstone before them, gesturing for them to take it themselves. One werewolf couldn't resist and lunged forward, only to have Elijah rip out his heart. Two more werewolves rushed at him, and Elijah ripped out their hearts as well. Sensing the danger, Jules quickly fled. The last remaining werewolf cowered in his clothes, trembling, too terrified to look this demon in the eye. Elijah mercifully snapped his neck. Then Elijah helped Damon by snapping the collar off his neck.
You realize this is the third time I saved your life now?
Damon looked up at Elijah with utter admiration, like a starstruck fanboy. After that, Elijah left, not forgetting to take the moonstone with him. Damon had been ready to abandon the idea of assassinating Elijah, but afterward, Bonnie told Damon that the ritual was part of Elijah's plan. Elijah intended to sacrifice Elena, which reignited Damon's resolve. No one can harm the woman he loves. Alaric finally came back to life, though it seemed like each revival was taking longer than the last. Damon then informed Stefan about the situation, telling him and Elena, who were on vacation, not to return just yet. He would handle Elijah. When Elena heard this, she didn't show the slightest surprise. It turned out that when she made the deal with Elijah, she noticed that he was careful with his words, never once guaranteeing her survival, so Elena had suspected it, but she agreed to the deal anyway.
How could you stand out there earlier with me, talking about making plans for our future when you don't even expect to have one?
I'm sorry, Stefan. I'm just trying to keep...
That's not heroic. That's tragic.
Meanwhile, Bonnie finally accepted Jeremy after his persistent pursuit. When Carol returned home, she discovered that her son Tyler had left without saying a word. Before leaving town, Tyler met up with his best friend Matt, confessing that he truly did love Caroline, but Caroline didn't love him back.
So you be good to her. Okay?
Yeah, man.
This was the most malevolent creature among vampires, the Ripper. He was a ruthless killer, driven mad by bloodlust, attacking with the ferocity of a rabid dog. Young and beautiful women fell under his spell, eager to offer up their lives. This was Stefan at his most wicked. Elena discovered in her ancestor Jonathan's journal that after humans defeated the vampires over 100 years ago, they believed they could live in peace. However, the vampires created a new monster. One night, an uninvited guest arrived at Jonathan's house. Seeing his family on edge, Jonathan took out the vampire compass to prove that there were no vampires nearby. But the once still pointer began to spin wildly, and in the blink of an eye, his good friend was dead, leaving Jonathan frozen in shock. At that very moment, his terrified wife rushed out, and the monster drained her blood right in front of Jonathan.
I recognized him. It was Stefan Salvatore.
Reading this, Elena was utterly shocked. She looked out the window at her boyfriend Stefan, realizing that he had killed her own ancestor. Some of you might wonder, wasn't Jonathan killed? How could he have written in his journal? Don't forget, Jonathan's family had 2 resurrection rings enchanted by witches. Stefan, unaware that he had been exposed, was on the phone with his brother Damon. With Tyler gone, the werewolf threat had subsided, so Damon planned to assassinate Elijah of the originals tonight. After hanging up, Stefan looked back at Elena inside the house and suddenly felt a sense of dread. Elena didn't hide what she had read in the journal, and Stefan admitted to it calmly. In fact, Stefan was even more evil than what the journal described.
He described you as a monster.
That's what I was. In the weeks after I became a vampire, I relished in it. I took it to the darkest place I could.
At that time, with war raging, people were too concerned with their own survival to care about others, turning Mystic Falls into Stefan's paradise. Every night, he would abduct a few young women, indulging in bloodshed and pleasure. Stefan's descent into bloodlust disgusted his brother Damon. Damon was always cleaning up Stefan's messes, but Stefan only became more depraved. Disappointed in his brother, Damon decided to leave town. The brothers' personalities were polar opposites. Despite Stefan's desperate pleas and promises that he would change, Damon was determined to leave. Now it seems that everything Damon indulged in was merely a part of Stefan's past actions. Later, a woman entered Stefan's life, pulling him back from the abyss. Because of the ongoing war, Stefan could openly feed on wounded soldiers, and the numbed people turned a blind eye. During this time, Stefan set his sights on a girl, following her closely, only to be ambushed. She was a vampire too. Given the chaotic times, no one cared about vampires, so Lexi had come to Mystic Falls in search of adventure. At Stefan's invitation, Lexi moved into his mansion. What she found inside was a scene straight out of hell, with corpses strewn everywhere. Lexi was horrified. It turns out that Stefan is the notorious Ripper among vampires, but having come this far, Lexi decided to help Stefan overcome his addiction to killing. She guided him through the suffering of humanity, helping him discover love amidst the pain. From that day on, Stefan began to struggle with himself, resisting his thirst for blood. Before leaving town, Damon didn't say goodbye to his brother but did have a conversation with Lexi.
Help him. He needs it.
I'll help him.
The withered old woman transformed into an 18-year-old beauty immediately after drinking a small vial of fresh blood. It was shocking to see such a stunning vampire reduced to this state. Damon, in a rare act of kindness, brought the blood to Catherine, hoping to confirm something.
No, Damon. If you kill Elijah, then I'm stuck in here forever.
Could the original vampires be killed? Though Catherine refused to answer, her expression betrayed her. Damon's resolve to assassinate the originals only grew stronger. The more Catherine became agitated, the more confident Damon felt. Since arriving in town, Elijah had been studying its history, seeking the site where witches were burned en masse during the witch trials. Lately, Jenna had been distancing herself from Alaric and growing closer to Elijah, which troubled Alaric greatly. But Elijah was an original vampire. Alaric knew he couldn't possibly win against him. Meanwhile, during Jeremy and Bonnie's date, an enraged Luca showed up, demanding to know what Bonnie had done to him. Jeremy and Bonnie worked together, denying that they had drugged Luca, who left in anger. A frustrated Alaric called Damon for a drink, only to run into Jenna and Elijah. Alaric felt deeply uncomfortable, not wanting to see Elijah get too close to Jenna, so he agreed to join Damon's assassination plan. Damon then invited Elijah to a dinner party, but unfortunately, Jenna wanted to attend as well. Before the dinner, Damon and Alaric began planning the assassination. At this time, a guest arrived unexpectedly. It turned out to be John. After learning about the banquet, he arrived uninvited. No one wanted him there, but John shamelessly stayed for the meal. Before long, the esteemed guest Elijah finally arrived. Having lived for over 1,000 years, Elijah could easily see through people's intentions, but as a powerful original, his arrogance made him willing to face any threat head-on.
If you so much as make a move to cross me, I'll kill you and I'll kill everyone in this house. Are we clear? Crystal.
Though the dinner appeared calm on the surface, it was seething with hidden tension. Damon initiated a conversation about the town's history, trying to uncover why Elijah was so interested in it. Elijah's answers were vague, but Damon picked up on a key phrase: the site of the witch trials. Meanwhile, Elena discovered in her ancestors' journal that there once was an ancient white oak capable of killing the originals, but it had been burned to ashes. The witches had forged a dagger, and when combined with the ashes of the white oak, it could kill the originals. Realizing he could no longer hide the truth, Stefan confessed Damon's assassination plan. The journal mentioned that only a human could use the dagger. Any vampire who did so would pay with their life. Stefan immediately understood John's plan, a clever strategy to kill Elijah with 2 birds with 1 stone, using Damon to do the job, and Damon would die in the process. Meanwhile, Damon invited Elijah to sample his fine wine, his murderous intent already brewing. Unable to reach Damon by phone, Stefan called Alaric instead. At that moment, Alaric was chatting with Jenna. Finally understanding why she had been distancing herself, it turned out that John had been badmouthing him behind his back. John had been pressuring Alaric in an attempt to reclaim the resurrection ring. Because Elijah is very arrogant, he is unaware of Damon's little tricks. Just as Damon is about to make his move, Alaric rushes in, so Damon has to stop. Knowing that vampires have extraordinary hearing, Alaric had to write a note to explain the situation to Damon. Damon was furious. Realizing that John had tricked him, the plan to assassinate Elijah was abruptly halted, and it was now time for dessert. Damon shot a furious glare at John, silently vowing revenge. Since John was on Elena's protection list, Damon decided to mess with him by complaining to Elijah about John's wicked schemes, suggesting he be removed from the list. Damon did this purely to spite John. John ignored Damon entirely and instead questioned Elijah on how he planned to deal with Klaus. Elijah was a little upset. You guys don't seem to understand your position.
I allow Elena to remain in her house, living her life with her friends as she does as a courtesy. If you become a liability, I'll take her away from you. You'll never see her again.
The original's vampire Elijah's harsh words were only halfway through when suddenly Alaric stabbed him through the heart. Even Damon was stunned by this unexpected turn of events.
I'll get rid of him before Jenna comes back with dessert.
Elijah's body was tossed into the cellar. When Elena and Stefan got the news, Elena discovered from the journal that the dagger had to remain in the original's body, or else the original would come back to life. Stefan's expression changed drastically as he quickly called his brother. Sure enough, Elijah's body had already disappeared. The original's vitality was simply too formidable. Having survived, Elijah sought out Jonas, demanding he use magic to locate Elena. Damon and the others must have attacked tonight because they had learned of Elijah's plan to sacrifice Elena. Since only Elijah and Jonas's family knew of the plan, Jonas deduced that Bonnie had meddled, prompting him to confront her in a rage. At that moment, Bonnie and Jeremy were on a date when Jonas stormed in. With a wave of his hand, Jeremy was pinned to the wall, and Bonnie had her magic stripped away. Elijah then found the cabin. He picked up a handful of pebbles, which in his hand became as deadly as bullets. Since vampires need an invitation to enter a room, Elena nervously approached the door. She pulled out a dagger and threatened Elijah, demanding he renew his previous promise.
Promise me you won't harm anyone that I love, even if they've harmed you.
Such an unreasonable request was a direct insult to Elijah's dignity, so he refused with a smile. But Elena was no longer the naive little girl she once was. She turned the dagger on herself and plunged it into her abdomen. Elijah roared in anger, rushing to the door. Elena was the crucial piece in his plan, so nothing could happen to her. Elijah was forced to compromise.
I give you my word.
Not only did he have to swallow his pride, but he also had to continue protecting them. Elijah would never have imagined that he would be outmaneuvered so many times in a single day, stabbed twice within hours. As it turned out, Damon had already brought the weapon, and everything had been carefully orchestrated. Meanwhile, Alaric wanted to repair his relationship with Jenna, but John interfered, leaving Alaric no choice but to give up the resurrection ring for the sake of love. Elijah's body was once again thrown into the cellar. They also gained an unexpected prize, the Moonstone. Elena's original plan had been to sacrifice herself to save her loved ones, but now, by sealing Elijah, she demonstrated her resolve to fight against her fate. So Elena urged the brothers not to keep any more secrets from her. When Damon returned to his room, he saw a shadowy figure in the bathroom and assumed Andy hadn't left.
Hello, Damon.
Miss Catherine,
Hey, do you have a room?
feel so.
Once again, Damon had been fooled by Catherine. It turned out that after Elijah was sealed, his control over Catherine no longer worked. Damon couldn't help but question his life choices, wondering if he would ever get the better of this woman.
I'm at that room.